title we must contemplate together is not a mere phrase, but a mirror. 7 signs your light shines with an energy few can stand. When we approach such a statement, we are not looking at a slogan or a casual reflection. We are touching upon the fundamental drama of the psyche, the eternal conflict between light and shadow, the loneliness of the soul, whose radiance does not harmonize with the collective. This is not merely poetic speech. It is the lived experience of those whose very existence seems to provoke discomfort in others, as though the vibration of their being discloses truths that the world would rather not see. To shine with a light few is to stand in the presence of the archetype itself. The archetype of the self, radiant with wholeness, is unbearable to those who are not yet ready to encounter their own hidden totality. Imagine, if you will, walking into a darkened hall where people have long been accustomed to shadows. When suddenly a lantern is brought into that hall, it reveals not only the beauty of the architecture, but also the dust, the cracks, the neglected corners. The light does not discriminate. It illuminates both what is noble and what is rotten. And so, those who carry this light, consciously or unconsciously, become the ones others resist, sometimes despise or avoid, because their very being unmasks what is hidden. This is not a moral accusation, but a psychological inevitability. For when the unconscious is exposed, it rarely thanks the hand that reveals it. You may ask why such energy is difficult for others to endure. The answer lies not in the arrogance of superiority, but in the fact that most people live within the confines of their persona. The mask society has taught them to wear. The persona is convenient, useful, protective, but it is not the totality of the individual. Behind it lies the shadow, the repressed, the unwanted, the rejected. And when your presence makes their shadows stir, they feel threatened. Your laughter, your intensity, your authenticity, all these things awaken in them a recognition of what they themselves have buried. And so they react not against you, but against their own unconscious reflected in your mirror. I recall a patient of mine who once dreamed of a blazing sun that descended into her small village. The dream was terrifying for her. In the dream, the villagers fled from the sun's brightness, hiding in cellars, covering their eyes, cursing the sky for what had arrived. She alone remained standing in the open, trembling and blinded, but unwilling to turn away. Such a dream is not a coincidence. The sun is the ancient symbol of consciousness, of illumination, of the self-demanding recognition. To stand in its light requires courage, but to bring that light into the collective invites resistance, suspicion, even hostility. For most people do not seek transformation. They seek comfort. They prefer the familiar prison to the frightening open field of freedom. This is why, when your light shines, you will often find yourself surrounded not by applause, but by silence, avoidance, and sometimes even aggression. Do not misunderstand this dynamic. It is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that you are touching something archetypal, something raw, something too large for the ordinary ego to tolerate without preparation. And so the tension arises You carry a gift that appears to others as a curse. The mystics of every age have known this. Christ said that men loved darkness rather than light, for their deeds were evil. But psychologically, we can interpret this in less moralistic terms. People love darkness because it allows them to remain unchallenged, to remain undisturbed in their habitual identities. The moment the light enters, they must confront the cracks in their self-image, the wounds they have not healed, the truths they have not lived. And who among us truly delights in such confrontation? Most would rather flee. This is why loneliness so often accompanies the luminous soul. You will sit among friends and feel the invisible wall. You will walk among crowds and feel that something in you is too loud even when you are silent. This is the burden of carrying the self's torch in a world that prefers shadows. Yet it is also the privilege, for the light within you is not given for comfort but for transformation. And transformation is never comfortable. If we descend deeper into this theme, we must ask, what is this light that few can stand? It is not mere charisma. It is not external charm. It is the radiance of integration, the glow of the psyche that has made some peace with its own opposites. When you have dared to confront your shadow, when you have not denied your darkness, but embraced it, something happens in the aura of your being. You cease to project as heavily onto others. Instead, you embody a strange and unsettling wholeness. This wholeness is rare, and it vibrates like a chord struck on a sacred instrument. Others feel it unconsciously, and it unsettles them, for it awakens their longing for the same. But longing is painful, and it is easier to reject the one who awakens it than to face the inner demand for transformation. In such a state, you become like the dream figure who appears as both friend and threat. Some will be irresistibly drawn to you, as though you were a fire in a cold night, while others will recoil as though you were an inferno that might consume them. Do not confuse the reactions of others with the essence of your light, for the light does not belong to you. It belongs to the archetype of the self working through you. You are the vessel, the channel, the medium, and the resistance you encounter is resistance to the archetype itself. Think of the myth of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and brought it to humanity. He was punished not because fire was evil, but because humanity was not ready for such power without consequence. The fire he brought symbolized consciousness, illumination, the spark of divine knowledge, and yet the collective resisted it. So it is with your light. To bring illumination into unconscious spaces provokes not gratitude but ambivalence. For with light comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes the demand to change. Those who cannot bear your energy will often seek to diminish you. They may ridicule, distance, or even persecute you. But notice that their actions betray their fear. For what they truly resist is not you, but the transformation that your presence threatens. If you understand this, you will not take their rejection personally. You will see it as the natural response of an ego protecting itself against the flooding tide of the unconscious. And you will learn compassion. For you too have resisted the light at times. You too have fled from truths that seemed unbearable. The difference is that you no longer flee as you once did. You stand trembling but resolute in the radiance of what demands to be seen, the dream world often reveals this tension with symbolic clarity. One might dream of carrying a lamp through a dark forest, and the animals scatter in fear of its glow. Or one might dream of a house where certain rooms are always locked, and when the dreamer dares to open them, others in the house scream in protest. These are not idle images. They are the psyche's way of dramatizing the fact that illumination disturbs the established order of the unconscious. To carry light is to invite disturbance within oneself and in others, and disturbance is rarely welcomed. Yet the path of individuation demands it, for to individuate is to become whole, and to become whole is to shine, and to shine is to be misunderstood. There is no way around this. If you wish to remain universally accepted, remain dim, but if you wish to live authentically, allow the flame to burn, even if it blinds those who look at you, for the self does not compromise. It demands fullness, not half-light, and fullness is always too much for some. This is why I tell you, when your light shines and few can stand it, you are closer to your destiny than when everyone applauds. Applause belongs to the persona. Resistance belongs to the self, and the self is infinitely more important. The self calls you beyond comfort, beyond conformity, into the solitude where your radiance is both a burden and a blessing. And if you remain faithful to this call, your very existence will become a message even to those who resist it. For light works silently. Even when rejected, it leaves its trace in the soul of those who encountered it. And someday, perhaps long after you are gone, that trace may awaken something in them. Then your suffering will not have been in vain. When you consider the experience of shining with a light that unsettles others, you must also recognize the paradox within yourself. For the same radiance that awakens resistance in the collective also awakens resistance in your own heart. Do not imagine that you are immune to the discomfort of illumination. The ego fears its own expansion, for expansion demands the death of its boundaries, and so the inner drama mirrors the outer. Just as others may turn away from you, you will at times be tempted to turn away from yourself. The voice of doubt will whisper, dim your flame, lower your tone, shrink your presence, for safety lies in the shadows. And yet, that voice is the voice of fear, not of destiny. There is a dream that often arises in those who begin to individuate. They dream of holding a candle that is fragile, wavering, about to be extinguished by the winds around them. And yet, the dreamer protects the flame with both hands, shielding it from the storm. That candle is the symbol of the nascent self within you. It is not yet the blazing sun, but it is alive, and it insists on surviving. The hands that shield it are your own will, your own devotion, your refusal to let the winds of conformity or rejection extinguish what is most sacred in you. And over time, if you continue to protect this flame, it will grow into a fire that no storm can quench. But the process is gradual, and the temptation to surrender, it is strong. Only devotion to the truth within you will keep it alive. To live in this light is to live in tension. You will always feel the pull of two worlds, On one side is the collective demanding you remain as they have always known you, predictable, agreeable, manageable. On the other side is the call of the self, summoning you into unknown territory, asking you to live a truth larger than comfort. To obey the collective is to betray your soul. To obey the self is to risk loneliness, rejection, and misunderstanding. And yet, to betray the self is a deeper death than any social exclusion. This is why so many live lives of quiet despair, because they chose to extinguish their light rather than endure the cost of carrying it. But you are here because your psyche has chosen. Otherwise, you would not be drawn to this message if the archetype were not already stirring within you. You already know the burden of radiance. You have felt the sting of rejection, not because of your flaws, but because of your presence. You have seen relationships unravel, not because you spoke cruelly, but because your authenticity revealed what others wished to keep hidden. You have been punished not for wrongdoing, but for being too much, too alive, too real. And so you stand at the threshold of individuation, called to embrace what few can accept. Even while enduring the cost of shining, the myths give us insight into this. Recall the figure of Moses, whose face shone after he encountered the divine on the mountain. The people could not look upon his radiance. They demanded that he cover his face with a veil. This is not merely a religious story, but a psychological drama. To encounter the luminous, to come into contact with the self, is to be transformed in a way that others cannot bear. And so, like Moses, many luminous souls feel compelled to wear a veil, to dim themselves for the sake of others. But the danger of the veil is that over time, one forgets the light behind it. One begins to believe in the mask, and the flame dwindles. The task is not to veil the light, but to learn how to bear the loneliness it brings, to remain faithful to it, even when it isolates you. Another example arises from the myth of Cassandra, gifted with the power of prophecy, yet cursed that no one would believe her. This too is the fate of the luminous soul. You see what others cannot. You sense the movements of the unconscious. You recognize the patterns that lead to destruction. But when you speak, you are met with dismissal or disbelief. Your vision is too much for the ordinary mind. And so you are treated as though your clarity were madness. Yet the myth reveals the deeper truth. It is not madness, but foresight. Not delusion, but insight. Cassandra bore the agony of being right while unacknowledged. And many of you bear the same agony, knowing in your depths what others deny, and suffering the isolation of being unseen in your truth. The psychological danger, of course, is to become embittered. To feel rejected for your light can tempt you into pride, into the belief that you are superior to the masses. But this is not the path of individuation. Superiority is merely another mask of the ego, another way of avoiding the loneliness of authenticity. The true task is compassion, not the naive compassion that spares others from truth, but the deep compassion that understands why they resist. For if you have truly integrated your shadow, you know that you too once resisted, and you too are still resisting in places you have not yet seen. And so you carry your light not as a weapon, but as a quiet offering, knowing It will be rejected by many, but knowing too that its presence may one day awaken what sleeps in them. The dream symbols continue to teach us. I recall a dream where the dreamer saw himself as a lighthouse on a stormy coast. Ships passed by, some guided safely, others cursing the light because it revealed rocks they would rather not see. The dreamer awoke with sorrow, feeling hated by those he wished to help. But the light of the lighthouse does not exist to be liked. It exists to shine, to reveal, to guide, and yes, sometimes to frighten your energy, like the light of the lighthouse cannot be for everyone. It is not meant to be. It is meant for those who are ready to see, and the ships that curse your light are not your concern. Your task is to remain faithful to the radiance, not to please the passing vessels. This is why individuation often feels like exile. To live in the light of the self is to be exiled from the comfort of the herd. But exile is also initiation. In exile, you discover the depth of your soul. You learn to converse with your own unconscious, to befriend your shadow, to listen to the archetypal voices that rise within you. You realize that the loneliness of being too much for others is also the doorway into communion with the deeper self. The silence of rejection becomes the silence in which the psyche speaks most clearly. And what seemed like punishment becomes revelation. This is not to romanticize the suffering. It is real. It wounds. It isolates. But it is also necessary, for without the wound of rejection, you might never descend deeply enough into your own depth. Without the loneliness of being too bright for others, you might never discover the companionship of your own soul. The wound is the doorway. The rejection is the initiation, and the energy that few can stand is precisely the energy that will guide you into wholeness. If you doubt this, look again at your own life. Recall the moments when you were most rejected. Did they not force you to turn inward, to question, to search, to descend? Did not those very wounds open you to insights and depths you would not otherwise have reached? The rejection of others was the invitation of the self. The pain of being too much was the birth pangs of individuation. You did not choose this path, it chose you. And now you stand as one who bears light, not because you sought applause, but because your soul demanded it. So, when your light shines with an energy few can stand, remember this. You are not here to be comfortable. You are here to be whole. And wholeness always disturbs. Wholeness is not polite. It is not agreeable. It is fierce, radiant, uncompromising. It demands that you embody what you are, not what others can accept. And in doing so, you become not only yourself, but also a vessel of transformation for the world. Even if the world resists you, do not fear the resistance. Do not shrink before it. For the resistance of others is the confirmation of your authenticity. It is the evidence that you are no longer living in the shallow waters of the persona, but in the deep current of the self. And the self, once awakened, will not let you return to sleep. You may wish at times for the comfort of invisibility, but the flame has been lit, and it will not be extinguished. The light is yours to carry. whether others stand it or not. When you walk with a light that unsettles others, you will inevitably encounter projections. This is one of the central truths of depth psychology. What is unconscious in others is thrown upon you, and you become the screen for their inner dramas. They may accuse you of arrogance, when in truth it is their own insecurity that has been stirred. They may call you dark, when in fact your light has revealed their hidden shadows. They may paint you as dangerous, when the danger they sense is not you but the awakening of something within themselves they are not ready to face. In this way, to carry radiance is to live under constant projection. You are rarely seen for who you are. You are seen as the embodiment of what others cannot yet integrate. This can be profoundly painful. Imagine being treated as a mirror rather than a human being. Imagine having others flee from you, not because of your malice, but because their unconscious insists that you are the enemy of their comfort. To shine is to become the lightning rod for what others deny. And so, if you are not careful, you may fall into despair. You may ask yourself again and again, why do they not understand me? Why am I rejected when I wish only to love? Why do they resist when all I bring is authenticity? But if you understand the mechanics of projection, you will realize that their reactions are not about you at all. They are about the archetypal power working through you. The self in you disturbs the sleeping shadows in them. And so they respond not to your personality, but to the archetype itself. I once heard a dream where the dreamer saw herself clothed in white, entering a market. At once the crowd turned, some praising her, others cursing her, some fleeing as if from a ghost. She was bewildered, for she had done nothing. Yet the dream reveals the truth. The archetype shines through you. And people react not to your deeds, but to the symbol you have become in their inner world. To one, you are the angel. To another, the demon. To one, the healer. To another, the threat. But in truth, you are simply the vessel of light. The projections belong not to you, but to the dream. They are living unconsciously. The task, then, is to learn detachment. Do not cling to the praise, for it is as much a projection as the blame. Do not cling to the love, for it may not be love for you, but for the light in you they wish to possess. Do not cling to the hatred, for it too is a distortion. Instead, anchor yourself in the self, in that inner center that does not waver. When others project upon you, you will never be seen fully by the world. That is not your task. Your task is to see yourself, to remain faithful to the inner flame, even when the world cannot recognize it. There is an image from alchemy that captures this, the symbol of the Sol Niger, the black sun. It represents the paradox of illumination that brings darkness before it brings light. Those who encounter your radiance may first experience it as unbearable, as if the sun itself had become black. For what you awaken in them is the shadow, and the shadow must be faced before true light can be received. Do not be dismayed if others experience you first as darkness. Often, that is the necessary beginning. The psyche must pass through the confrontation with its shadow before it can embrace the fullness of the self. And so your light may initially appear as threat, as curse, as pain, Yet in time, for those willing to endure, it becomes blessing. Consider as too the archetype of the wounded healer. The one who heals is often the one who has suffered deeply. Your light is not a gift of privilege, but of suffering transmuted into wisdom. You have known the nights of despair. You have wandered through valleys where no voice comforted you. You have faced the silence of God and the terror of the unconscious. And from those depths, you emerged with a light not easily extinguished. This is why it unsettles others, for they sense, perhaps unconsciously, that your radiance was purchased at the price of descent. And descent is what most fear above all things. They wish for light without shadow, for wisdom without suffering, for consciousness without descent. But the psyche does not work this way. Illumination is born of darkness, and so those who have not yet descended will fear the one who carries proof of what must be faced. You will find, therefore, that those most disturbed by your energy are often those most entangled in avoidance. The more someone clings to their persona, the more they will resist the one whose presence cracks it open. The more someone denies their wounds, the more they will resent the one whose gaze awakens them. In this way, your very being becomes diagnostic. The reactions of others reveal not your flaw, but their level of readiness. And so, when you encounter resistance, learn to ask, what in them is being stirred? What shadow have I unknowingly touched? This question will free you from taking their rejection personally, and it will grant you compassion for their struggle. Do not misunderstand me. This does not mean you must remain in every environment where you are rejected. There is wisdom in retreat. There are times when you must withdraw your flame, not to extinguish it, but to protect it, just as the alchemists knew that the vessel must be sealed for transformation to occur. So too must your soul be protected in its process. To expose your light continually to those who cannot bear it is to waste its energy. You must discern where your presence is received as sacred and where it is trampled as threat. And where it is trampled, withdraw, not in bitterness, but in patience. The time may come when they are ready. Until then, your task is not to force illumination, but to remain faithful to your own becoming. Another dream comes to mind. A dreamer saw herself carrying a torch through a dark city. People rushed at her, trying to blow out the flame. She ran, terrified, but the flame never dimmed. Finally, she stopped running and stood still. The crowd dispersed, confused, and the flame grew brighter until it lit the entire city. The lesson of the dream is clear. Your light cannot be extinguished by the resistance of others. It grows brighter when you cease running from their rejection, when you stand firm. The archetype shines through you with greater clarity, and eventually what was feared becomes undeniable. Some may still resist, but others will awaken. The city will see, even if not all at once. This is why patience is essential. You cannot force the awakening of another. You cannot demand that others love your light. You can only embody it faithfully, day after day, knowing that the archetype works in silence and time. Seeds planted in one generation may not sprout until the next. You may not see the fruits of your radiance in your lifetime, but do not despair. The self works beyond the span of individual years. What matters is not that you are recognized now, but that you remain true. Recognition belongs to the ego. Faithfulness belongs to the soul. And here, let us pause and reflect on your own heart. When you hear these words, something in you stirs, does it not? Perhaps a memory of rejection, perhaps the ache of loneliness, perhaps the trembling knowledge that you have always been different. That stirring is not a coincidence. It is the resonance of the archetype within you. The self is reminding you of who you are. You are not here to fit neatly into the collective. You are here to embody a truth larger than acceptance. You are here to shine, even when few can bear it. And though this is lonely, it is also sacred, for the path of light is always the path of solitude. And solitude is the crucible of transformation. Do not flee your solitude. In it, you will hear the voice of the unconscious, whispering symbols, dreams, images. You will discover companions not of flesh, but of archetype ancient figures who have walked this path before you. The wise old man, the great mother, the trickster to the hero. These are not fantasies, but living forces in your psyche. They will accompany you if you dare to listen. And in their company, you will realize that you are never truly alone. The loneliness of the world is the doorway to the communion of the soul. So when you feel the weight of being too much for others, remember, you are not too much. You are exactly what you must be. It is not your task to shrink, but to endure. The endurance itself is initiation. And in enduring, you will discover the deepest paradox of all, that the light few can stand is precisely the light the world most desperately needs. Though they resist it, though they flee from it, though they curse it, they are nourished by it nonetheless. Just as plants turn towards the sun, even while their roots struggle in darkness, so too do souls unconsciously draw life from your radiance. Even if their egos protest, and this is why you must not hide, for to hide your light is to deny the world the very medicine it resists. The greatest paradox of shining with an energy few can stand is that while it isolates you from the many, it simultaneously draws to you the few who are destined to awaken. It is always this way. The crowd resists, but within the crowd are those whose unconscious longs for the very light they fear. They approach cautiously, perhaps even with suspicion, but something in them knows you carry a key, and when they dare to remain in your presence long enough, their own shadows begin to stir, their own flames begin to kindle. They may resent you for the pain you awaken, but eventually they recognize that the pain is not a wound inflicted by you, but the birth pangs of their own soul. And in that recognition, your solitude transforms into a hidden fellowship. Not many, but a few, and the few are enough. For the work of light is never about quantity, it is about depth. The archetype does not require the applause of the masses. It requires the transformation of individuals. A single soul awakened to itself becomes a seed of transformation for generations. This is why you must remain faithful. Even when the world mocks or ignores you, The fruit of your light may not be visible in your lifetime, but it will ripple outward in unseen ways, a word spoken, a presence felt, a dream stirred. All these may awaken another, and that awakening may one day awaken many more. The chain is endless. Your light is not wasted, even when it seems rejected, for the psyche does not forget. What it resists now, it may one day embrace, and the spark you carried will have been the hidden beginning, but you must endure the in-between, the long seasons of being misunderstood, misused, even abandoned. This is the crucifixion before the resurrection, the descent before the ascent. Every myth testifies to this pattern. Orpheus descends to the underworld before he sings. Christ is crucified before he rises. Osiris is torn apart before he is reassembled. These myths are not history, but psychology. They tell us that light is always tested in darkness, that radiance must be forged in rejection. Your suffering is not incidental, it is archetypal. It belongs to the eternal drama of the soul becoming whole. And if you can see it this way, your loneliness becomes more than pain. It becomes initiation. The dream symbols return again and again to this truth. Many who carry the light dream of being pursued, chased, cast out. At first, these dreams terrify, but when understood, they reveal the archetype at work. You are not being punished. You are being transformed. The pursuit in the dream is the resistance of the collective unconscious, and your task is not to escape, but to endure, to allow the chase to teach you the strength of standing in your own being. Eventually, the dream shifts. What once pursued you now kneels. What once threatened you now becomes your ally. And this is how the psyche teaches. First through fear, then through recognition, and finally through integration. It is essential then to recognize that the rejection you feel is not the final word. It is the beginning of a process. What is unbearable now may one day be embraced. Those who flee from you today may one day seek you, though you may not live to see it. The archetype does not work on the clock of the ego. It works in centuries, in generations, in timeless spirals. Your task is not to control its outcome, but to remain faithful to your part. And your part is to carry the flame, however heavy, however lonely. Do not mistake this as a call to arrogance. To carry light is not to imagine yourself superior. It is to accept that you have been chosen by the psyche to embody what others resist. You did not choose this. It chose you. And because it chose you, you will often feel unworthy, inadequate, even resentful. You will wish at times that you could simply be ordinary, unnoticed, invisible, and yet the flame continues to burn. You cannot extinguish it without extinguishing yourself. And so humility is not to deny your light, but to recognize that it is not yours, it belongs to the self, and you are. But the vessel, your task is to remain open, to remain faithful, to carry it without pride and without shame. This humility will protect you from the dangers of inflation. For many who encounter the light fall into the trap of believing they are the light. This is a grave error. The light belongs to the archetype, not to the ego. When the ego claims it as its own, the result is disaster, spiritual arrogance, messianic delusion, the intoxication of power. The true bearer of light knows that it passes through them, but does not originate from them. They are the lamp, not the flame. The lamp may be honored or despised, but the flame belongs to eternity. Hold to this truth, and you will walk the path with balance, and in time, something remarkable happens. The very energy that few can stand becomes the energy that transforms those who remain. You become a catalyst. You do not change others by force, but by presence. Your authenticity gives permission for their authenticity. Your integration awakens their longing for integration. Your courage to face the shadow invites them to face their own. This is the silent revolution of the psyche. It does not march in armies, it moves in whispers. And yet it is more powerful than any army, for it changes the soul at its root. And once the soul has been touched by the self, it can never again return to sleep in the same way. So, you see, the loneliness of being too bright is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of transformation. For you and for others, you are the threshold figure, standing between the darkness of the collective and the dawn of awakening. It is a heavy role, but it is also sacred. And if you accept it, you will find that the very burden becomes your blessing. For in carrying the light, you are carried by it. It guides you, strengthens you, consoles you in ways the world cannot. It becomes your secret companion, your inner sun, your inexhaustible source. And in this companionship, you will discover a joy deeper than the pain of rejection. A joy that comes not from being accepted, but from being true. That whose end then was an image. Imagine yourself standing on a high hill at night, holding a torch. Below you stretches a valley full of sleepers. Some stir at the sight of your flame, covering their eyes. Some curse you, some ignore you, but somewhere in the shadows, a few awaken, drawn by the light. They begin to climb the hill toward you, stumbling, afraid, but determined. You wait, not demanding, not forcing, simply shining. And when they reach you, they too light their torches from yours. Soon, the hill is filled with small flames, and the valley below is less dark. This is how transformation begins. Not with the approval of the many, but with the faithfulness of the few, and you are the beginning. So I tell you, do not fear if few can stand your light. Do not dim yourself to be accepted. Do not veil the flame to avoid rejection. For your energy, unbearable though it may be, is the very medicine the world does not know it seeks. Endure the loneliness. Embrace the exile. Remain faithful to the self. And know that even if the world turns away, eternity watches. The archetype rejoices, and the soul, your own and others, is being transformed in ways you cannot yet see. This is the mystery, the burden, and the glory of shining with a light few can stand